Currently, in the face of the international trend of unilateralism and power bullying, China will, together with Russia, shoulder the responsibilities of world powers and permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. We will uphold the correct view of World War II history, safeguard the authority and status of the United Nations, resolutely defend the rights and interests of China, Russia and other developing countries, and work together to promote an equal and orderly the world multipolarization and the inclusive economic globalization.
The two presidents, their Chinese President Xi Jinping speaking during that bilateral meeting with President Putin over in Moscow. All right, let's get more on what took place at that meeting in the Russian capital and the key takeaways there. China correspondent Min Lo has been covering the story for us. Is this still a no-limits friendship between the two?
Well, if you want a very visual way to see how close the two countries are, just watch the May 9 parade at the Red Square today, because Chinese troops are the largest foreign contingent that are participating in the parade. That's after Kyiv actually told or asked foreign countries not to send military troops to participate in that parade. And while neither leaders mentioned the no-limit friendship, but President Putin did say that their friendship is, quote, unbreakable. The two leaders still calling each other dear friends. There is a long list of things that they agree on. If you look at their joint statement, both calling out, the U.S. Export controls as a means to contain other countries, also calling out the eastward expansion of NATO, as well as the U.S. Indo-Pacific strategy as big destabilizers for this region, and also calling for jointly opposing this dual containment strategy of China and Russia and the smearing of China-Russia ties, because they seem very keen to highlight that their ties are not directed at any third parties. President Putin saying that both countries have their own independent foreign policy making. It's just that they are brought together by this common vision of creating a multipolar world. And it's not just about tone, it's also about substance, because they also signed some deals. Trade reached $245 billion last year, which the leader said is not just a new high, it's a new high, but it's not a new ceiling. And, they made some progress on the potential gas pipeline deal, and President Putin pledging to create a more favorable condition for Chinese companies and also welcoming Chinese car makers to build factories in Russia. This comes after Russia actually imposed higher import charges on Chinese car makers that led to a fall in Chinese exports to Russia.
The timing of this is also very interesting in the sense that you've got this meeting going on between Russia and China just ahead of China meeting with the US to start trade negotiations. We're also understanding perhaps that there's going to be a request from Washington for assistance from Beijing when it comes to Ukraine.
Yes, Trump said that he's going to raise that with President Xi, and actually President Xi did raise this issue with Putin as well. The question is how much leverage he has in actually influencing Putin, and he says he expects Russia to cut a fair deal with Ukraine, and that any deal will have to have the agreement of both parties through mutual dialogue. But he also reiterated that the root cause of this issue must be addressed. The legitimate security concerns of the war must be addressed. And I guess he is referring back to that expansion of NATO, as Xi has pointed out in the past. And question now is, with Trump perhaps a little bit more amenable to a solution that is more favorable to Russia, freezing the lines, the conflict at the current lines and leaving some of the territory in Russian hands, that perhaps provide an opening. But what complicates matters now is that now that President Trump has signed that minerals deal with President Zelensky, his tone has also softened towards Ukraine. So where sort of the shift, the balance of power is going to shift is still a big question mark here.